Join us now here on Matters of the State, South Dakota United States Senator Mike Rounds. Senator Rounds, good to see you.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
When it became clear what was happening in Israel last weekend and what we've seen in every day since, in the bigger scheme of things, did it come as a surprise to you?
It did. We've known that Hamas was capable of attacking. We also know that Hezbollah in the north has literally thousands and thousands of missiles, but this particular attack came as a surprise.
What is the United States' role in all of this? I mean, I know we've sent the Ford Carrier Group over there, and we're working on, munitions and that type of thing. Is that the extent of it? Should that be the extent of it?
We have American hostages that are being held by Hamas at this time.
Yeah.
That opens up the door for direct American involvement if needed. That's one of the reasons why the Ford Carrier Group is there. But it's also to send a strong message to Iran that since they have supplied Hamas with weapons literally for years, that they can be held accountable for what's going on there as well. In this particular case, we need to be able to provide as much intelligence, the reports and so forth, to Israel as we possibly can. Mm-hmm. We also have to send a message to the rest of the world that where we have allies, we will stick with them. And Israel is our ally, and it is in our nation's best interest to make sure that that message gets out, that we will stand by Israel during this very difficult time. And they are our key ally in the Middle East.
You know, in reports both from the White House and both from the office of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the United States at this point is not urging any type of restraint in Israel's response to all of this. Israel saying that they're going to go into the Gaza area and wipe out Hamas entirely. What is the problem? I'll just call it that. What is the problem, though, of going in like that? There's going to be civilian casualties.
And nobody wants to see civilian casualties, but in this case, just as after 9/11, where we went into Afghanistan and we went after the perpetrators of that, and nobody was going to stop us,
yeah.
The same thing occurs here. Israel has an absolute right to defend itself. They've lost thousands of individuals, dead, wounded. There are hostages being taken. Hamas is evil. Think of any organization out there that would behead babies, literally behead babies, and do it in front of their mothers and then kill the mothers. That's what was going on here. That message, that evil message, has to be confronted. And Israel has an absolute right to go in and to go after every single member of Hamas as quickly as possible. Hamas is not going to go away, and that type of evil has to be confronted. When they do that, the best thing that we can do is to support them. Mm-hmm. Now, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be ugly. There will be, unfortunately, civilian casualties on both sides of this. The difference is that we care about civilian casualties. Clearly, Hamas does not. And so what we want to do is stand by Israel. Hopefully, they will be able to limit the number of civilian casualties, maximize the impact they have on Hamas, and send a message to terrorists around the world that this type of action will never, ever be tolerated. I
want to circle back around to that idea of hostages that are being held at this time. Is it possible to negotiate with a group like Hamas? Can it be done?
Good question. In the past, there has been some limited ability, but today, with what they did, I can't imagine that Israel will end up negotiating with them. They'll simply come back, and if there's any type of a negotiation that would give Hamas anything, they would claim it as a victory, and it would encourage them. Today, we know that Iran has in the past supplied them. We don't know if Iran knew about this particular action yet, but what we do know is that Hamas has planned it. They've been diabolical in the way that they've planned it, mm-hmm. And if they get away with any of it at all, there will be seeds to reproduce the same thing again in the future. So I respect Israel's right to defend itself, and I think the United States should be doing everything we can to assist them in that effort, while hopefully minimizing the terrible loss to civilians that are not involved with Hamas.
Let's branch off to Iran for a second. It wasn't that long ago that there was word that I think it was $6 billion in funds meant for Iran had now been unfrozen and would be going that way. Is that still the case?
My understanding is that the United States and Qatar, who was holding in reserve these funds that were coming from South Korea, that has now been frozen. And that is good news. We didn't think that those funds should ever be released to Iran. We thought it would continue to be used or to supplement their terrorist activities, supplying terrorists and so forth. And to have Hamas turn around and attack, knowing full well that Iran now had resources to resupply them in the future, that can't be allowed, cannot be tolerated. So I totally support the refreezing of those assets.
Are there any parallels or any connective tissue that you see between what's going on in Israel and what's happening in Ukraine as it pertains to what the United States can do, could do, should do? Is there anything relative there?
There is one difference. The only difference that I see is that in Israel, there were Americans who were also taken hostage. So the United States has the right, and in fact has a responsibility to do whatever they can to assist in getting those American hostages out as well. There are no boots on the ground that are involved in the activities that we know of as the time of this discussion. I would expect that might be an item of discussion in the future because of the Ford Group being there and the availability of special forces if they are needed. But Israel will take this on the primary. We just got to make sure that we do everything we can to supply them with the resources to resupply. Iron Dome is a good example. We've asked for 2 more batteries of Iron Dome systems to come in. Iron Dome is what they protect their communities with it. They shoot down incoming missiles using what they call Iron Dome, which is
the rocket intercept system.
Yeah, it's a rocket intercept system that has really, really good radar, but they needed more. And in particular with Hamas on the south and Hezbollah north in Lebanon, we want to make sure that they have enough of these Iron Dome systems with the ammo to be able to protect from both the north and the south. So they're not hard to get over there. They can fly them in, and there are 2 extra units that we have in the United States that are not being used. We've checked with the Department of Defense. Senator Rosen out of Nevada and I have led a letter requesting that those systems be delivered to Israel to be incorporated into their Iron Dome system.
We're going to be talking about cybersecurity and if there might be a federal government shutdown in just a couple of weeks when we come back on Matters of the State. Welcome back to Matters of the State on this Sunday as we continue our conversation with South Dakota United States Senator Mike Rounds. I want to ask you about something. South Dakota is seen by many as being right on the forefront of cybersecurity. Just look at what they're doing in Madison at Dakota State. That is astounding. South Dakota is the only state, though, to turn down federal grant money to enhance cybersecurity protections for city governments and county governments. What's your reaction to that?
Disappointment. These funds are designed to provide additional cybersecurity protections. I know that some people out there think that you have to jump through hoops. These were designed not to have lots of hoops to jump through, but to provide resources so that these city governments, county governments, and so forth would have access to the capabilities to defend against attacks. We know the bad guys that are out there are looking at our communities. They're looking at ways to get into our systems because if they can make an impact. We will not have a kinetic war. We will not have a war the way that people have seen them in the past without having advanced cyber attacks to begin with. They'll try to shut down water systems. They'll try to shut down telecommunications, fuel, energy, and so forth. They'll try to shut all of that down beforehand to try to disrupt what's going on so that we are not in a good position to actually defend against a further attack. So yeah, I'd like to see the state reconsider that. Hopefully when the legislature gets back in, they'll take a look at the decisions that have made and perhaps they'll look at trying to get some of those resources in. Dakota State University is at the forefront, not just in terms of cybersecurity, where young people can actually do cybersecurity here in South Dakota and stay here, but artificial intelligence, quantum computing is going to be a part of DSU's future. They're working on it now. They've got great leadership there. And look, whatever we can do right now to bring those resources in and take advantage of that and keep our young people in the state doing marvelous things, I'm in favor of it.
I'm not asking you to be overly judgmental here, but you over in the Senate, how do you view what's happening in the House?
Disappointing, but we also know that the House recognizes, or the House was designed by the founding fathers to be emotional in nature. to reflect the concerns of the public. Look, the public are really angry right now. Look, the interest rates right now are such that it's impacting energy and food supplies. The average home in South Dakota, homeowner in South Dakota right now, is paying $995 more per month in living expenses than when Joe Biden started in office. And so when we talk about Bidenomics, people are angry. It's not like they're supporting it. They've seen $5.6 trillion in additional expenditures since President Biden came in, over and above what it takes to operate government. And in all of those cases, they've seen inflation come up. They've seen their standard of living go down. Their income or their salaries are not reflective of what their increased costs are. The House of Representatives reflects that frustration. And so coming in right now in the Senate, we're ready to do the appropriations process. The House is working their way through those, and then we'll have to do a conference call or a conference report on each of the 12 appropriation bills. We watch it. We wish they would have not taken their leader out to begin with, their speaker out to begin with. We hope that they'll get it resolved very quickly here and that we'll be able to get back to work. And in divided government, you have to work together. And I think a lot of the members in the House understand that, but they're so tight that they have no room for error right now on the Republican side. And on the Senate side, we're tight, but we also have recognized that we have to deal with folks that don't have the same point of view. We're trying to find a middle ground, and hopefully we'll be able to actually do the 12 appropriation bills for the first time in 5 years, and we're still committed to trying to get that done.
You know as well as we do that there was a continuing resolution that goes to the middle of November to get this budget work done, or we risk a federal government shutdown again. What do you think is going to happen when we hit mid-November?
We've actually done the counts on the number of days that we have to work, and the fact that the House has had to slow down and to stay out of session while they try to figure out who the speaker is going to be is going to make it extremely difficult for the House to be able to deliver a more conservative series of appropriation bills to the Senate to negotiate with. What that means is that the Senate probably has the upper hand, which means probably spending money that a number of the members in the House are not going to like seeing done. We hope that the House can have an influence on the spending because we think we could do better if we had a little bit more conservative approach in terms of some of the spending measures. But right now they're shooting themselves in the foot by not getting their work done on a timely basis. Some of the House members have said that, well, the Senate doesn't have their bills ready to go. We have to wait for the House because under the Constitution, we can't send them a Senate bill. We have to have a House bill that we can modify. Yeah. And when those come over, beginning on Monday, we'll start modifying them, putting them into a conference committee, and hopefully getting the work done. But we got a lot of work to do in a very short period of time.
Real quick, I know I've said that a couple times already. Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville holding up, I think it's hundreds now, of military promotions because he's upset over a mandate that's been put in place by the Secretary of Defense that would allow the Defense Department to pay members of the military travel expenses to get an abortion if they're serving in a state where abortion isn't legal, isn't available. How do you feel about him doing that?
Morally, he's in the right position because in the past, the Department of Defense has had people stationed in other countries that had even more restrictive abortion laws than we've had here. They didn't have any rules that did the same thing that they've imposed now. This was absolutely a political decision made to protest the decision by the Supreme Court to overturn Roe versus Wade. Now, we have to work our way through that issue. We do have a number, literally hundreds of military promotions that are being held up. We continue to work literally with Coach, with the senator, to try to find a path forward. And at the same time, we've talked to the folks in the Department of Defense saying, you guys know you made this policy change. You knew it was political in nature, and it wasn't the Department of Defense that made that decision. It was the White House that told them they had to do it. And so they knew they were going to get a response back. Both sides are going to have to come together and find a path forward. In the meantime, even in the Senate, Senator Schumer actually held up nominations saying that it was part of a response to Senator Tuberville's actions. We always do separate votes for the top command members. He was holding up those top positions as well, and he didn't have to. So he's adding fuel to the fire rather than finding a path forward. And we all know that in the Senate, and that's one of the reasons why you saw the Senator Tuberville make an effort to actually force a vote on those individually. And then Senator Schumer came back and said, okay, I'll do the top ones. And so the top positions have been filled, but we've got to find a path forward on these nominations fairly quickly.
South Dakota Senator Mike Rounds joining us here on Matters of the State. Thank you again for making time for us,
Thank you.
sir.
Appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back.